Hello there, and welcome back to the Closet Historian, and welcome back to Project 83. That's right, it's more about the same dress today, but this time we're going into the details of how I made this project, starting with how I made the pattern. So again, this was inspired by both 1950s dresses and by the Luke Skywalker costume from Return of the Jedi, so I wanted to combine those two things, and I did that by working with my basic block pattern as usual. But before I ramble on here, let me get on over to the blue patterning table of doom and show you how I constructed this pattern for this dress. Alright, so how am I going to take my two, sort of, you could imagine, disparate inspirations here, 1950s style dresses and the Return of the Jedi costume, and combine them together into a 1950s inspired Return of the Jedi dress, as it were. So, from far away, for people who are neither Star Wars fans nor 1950s fans, this probably looks like quite a retro dress, but it is combining elements from both here. So I'm just going to be doing a pencil skirt on this dress, sort of a slim, 1950s style dress here. I'm going to go ahead and do a long sleeve like on the jacket, and then up here is where most of the detailing that is similar to the Return of the Jedi jacket is going to be happening. So I'm going to be doing a standing mandarin collar, just like the Return of the Jedi jacket has. Of course, the jacket probably closes along this area, or this flap, I guess, the actual jacket does, whereas my dress will have a center back zipper, because I always have a center back zipper. It's me. That's just what I like. You do you. I like a center back zipper. So I'm going to have a mandarin collar that will break in the front and the back here. And then I will just do a yoke in the back with some top stitching that will totally blend in. But it's hard to see what's going on exactly in the Return of the Jedi jacket. I think this is probably a seam, and this is like a princess seam. I don't know what it's called in menswear when there's a princess seam, but a seam down here to eliminate this dart and create a style line instead. I'm just going to keep my dart and not worry about it. So I'll keep my darts on the waist here, and then I'm just going to do a yoke over the back here, because it does look like there's a seam on the jacket. It's hard to find stills. I mean, I didn't dig too hard, but it's hard to find pictures of the back of this. Some promotional photos show the front pretty well, but not the back. So that's just kind of what I'm doing for the back here. And then, of course, this will have the skirt as well, and the waist darts and all that. But up here in the top, oh my god, squeakiest table ever. For the top of this dress, translating the jacket into a dress pattern here, what I'm going to do is do a standing mandarin collar, and then this under here is going to have a little yoke piece like this, just like the back has a yoke. The front is going to have a yoke as well, and then there will be a panel here. So basically, if you imagine this without the flap or anything, just as a style line, it's just a basic princess seam bodice with an extra little, line at the top and some shoulder detailing. So it's not that hard to transform. You will see here shortly. The only difference is I'm going to be cutting basically this center panel here. I'm going to cut it out 3 times. I'm going to have 3 of these, because what I'm going to do is have the one that gets sewn along the princess seam, and then I will have a separate front panel here that will be completely separate from the rest of the bodice until I top stitch it on. And that one will be 2 layers. One will be black, one will be white on the inside, so that when this folds down, if you imagine this dotted line as a fold line, when that folds down, just like the Return of the Jedi jacket, it will be white on the inside, and the rest of the dress will be black on the outside, just like that costume and its excellent symbolism has inspired me to do here. So that is going to be a completely separate piece that will go onto the bodice here. I will show you all that when it comes to the sewing portion of this. But as far as the basic pattern drafting and construction of this, it's just like constructing a princess-seamed dress with a mandarin collar, really. So it's not going to be that left of field or out of our wheelhouse here on this channel. So first thing we have to do, of course, is take my standard bodice block pattern and turn it into a princess seam here. The jacket, I'll try and include an image here so you can see what I mean. The jacket that Mark Hamill wears as Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi, the princess seam, again, for lack of a better term, the prince seam on a menswear, I don't know. The princess seam is quite close to the shoulder, so I'm going to mimic that so that it has this sort of trapezoidal triangular effect on my bodice as well. So I will be having my princess seam a little bit closer to the armhole than perhaps I normally would draw it in. But that's kind of the only difference between this and a regular princess seam here until I start making the yoke and the collar situation, which again, we'll go through all of that with you just now. So let's start by, of course, as usual, tracing a copy of the basic block. I have a 2-dart bodice block here. This is just traced on poster board. People ask me every time what this black material is, and it is just poster board that I marked with white gel pen. That's why I have my funny dark mode block pattern here. But I'm just going to go ahead and trace these onto some alphanumeric paper trace the darts and draw those on as well. Anything relevant information like my center back line, because I have seam allowance here for a zipper. I also have seam allowance included in these block patterns that I trace every time, just so you know. The seam allowance is already included on this tracing, so I only have to add seam allowance where I cut into the pattern. So here I have a tracing of my front 2-dart bodice block situation. And of course, the first thing I'm going to do is draw in the line where I want my princess seam to be instead of these darts. Naturally, I have my apex marked here, which is where these darts are pointing to, and I'm going to connect from the apex down to this first dart leg because I will be eliminating this waist dart into the princess seam style line, but also from this apex point up to where I want that style line to be. So again, normally you kind of split this shoulder area, you kind of come in the middle for a princess seam, but today I want to match the Return of the Jedi jacket better, come in a little bit closer to the shoulders or the armhole, the arm side. So I'm just coming 2 inches in from the arm, actually. I'm using my ruler as a guide because this ruler is 2 inches wide. So I'm just gonna, so I have already drawn a line 2 inches at the shoulder down to the apex here. So now I have this straight line, very similar to the line I need, of course, or exactly the line I need, basically. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to cut the excess paper away here, and I'm going to cut along that line I drew. Oh no, it's editing Bianca here, cutting in to let you know that I'm forgetting to tell you a step in this main part of this video, so I wanted to cut in this clip. When you first are tracing your bodice here and you have your line drawn in, make sure you draw the notches you will need later to when you are sewing your princess seams and for other reasons. So what you're going to do is once you've drawn that line in, the princess style line, you come down from the apex 2 inches and mark a line that goes on either side. And you're going to do that the same up here as well. Just go 2 inches up from the apex and just make sure you have a line across onto the front and the side front. That way later you can match these 2 pieces up again along this seam properly and have the correct ease in this seam. So I just forgot to mention, draw these lines in, do it now, you'll thank me later. All right, so I have gone ahead and cut along that line and then cut the excess paper away here. So now I have my center front kind of piece and my side front piece starting out here. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and draw in from one of these dart legs to the apex point and then draw or square out 3/4 of an inch back. And what I'm going to do now is draw another line down to here. I guess I didn't have to draw that first line, whatever. I'm going to draw from this dart point to this new sort of swivel point that I'll be using. You could ask, why am I doing this? And it's because my pattern drafting book told me to. That's how it instructs me to do a princess seam, and so that's why I'm doing this. I don't always know the reasons behind something. I just follow my book. That's always worked for me. So, and again, in case anyone's wondering what pattern drafting book I use, or I prefer, the one I used to learn in school and was told to buy when I was in fashion school was Pattern Making for Fashion Design by Helen Joseph Armstrong, I believe is what it's called. I will put an image of the book here on screen and I will link to it in the description if I can find anywhere selling it. It is a textbook, so sometimes it can be harder to find, or different editions, maybe cheaper. Might be able to get it at your local library. It's a really good book. I would totally recommend it. I use it all the time for reference because, of course, because I don't do pattern drafting every single day, I still do forget certain details sometimes. But I'm just going to come in that 3/4 of an inch, reconnect that dart line down to this new point, and then you're going to cut in from this edge to that point and cut along that line to that point, but not through that point. That way you can swivel this dart closed, because we're going to be taking this out and we're going to take this dart out as well. So go ahead and just ease this up here as well, and you can basically cut along this line, because you're getting rid of the darts. Basically you're putting them, the dart fullness goes swung into the princess seam. So I'm going to go ahead, cut along this line, cut along here, show you what closing that dart looks like, and I will just go ahead and slice this little one off. All right, so I've just cut this dart away here. Again, I just kind of curved up to the apex, so I don't need this dart anymore. And now we're going to get rid of this one by simply having, again, hinged along that point. I'm going to go ahead and slide this along, and this is that first dart leg that I cut down, and slide it to match the other dart leg, and then tape along here and cut off the excess, and I will show you what that looks like and talk about what we're going to do next to the bust point. All right, so now with my waist dart removed, and then that shoulder, the side dart moved into basically a shoulder dart. That's kind of what you're doing when you're doing a princess seam. So then this gets sewn to this. It's as if you have 2 darts still, that are going away. It's just a style line instead. But right now, my bust point area is going to be just a little bit too pointy. So what I'm going to do is tape some paper underneath here, and I'll show you the modifications I do personally when I do a princess seam bodice now. After making a few, I've been actually working on a lot of princess seamed things this year. I kind of have learned the quirks of how to make them fit my body best, how I like them to fit best. So I'll show you what I will do to finish something like this off. So in my pattern drafting book, it tells me to add a 1/16 of an inch above along this, I guess from above the apex, to add 1/16 of an inch along this area, and then to ease it into this line. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then also draw in a curve just from that point along into this bust. It says blend here, so that's just what I'm going to do. I'm just going to draw a curve to blend from here along that 1/16 of an inch and then up into here, and I will show you what that looks like. Okay, so I've just blended this curve over that little added point here, and then up with that 1/16 up into my seam going up into the shoulder here. Now I am actually going to take off a little bit from down here. So you add about a 1/16 of an inch up here, and you take off a little bit underneath. That just helps it conform to the body quite well. So I'm going to go ahead and basically come in that same kind of amount down here below the bust, so like here-ish, and then just come in and then match it down to the waist. So I've just drawn in that little bit of taking fullness away from underneath the bust area, and I'm going to go ahead and cut along that line and along this new one that I have up here, and then I actually will cut off a little bit more from this bust area just so it's a little bit less pointy. I've just found that's what works for me, even though I am wearing usually more pointier style vintage bras. For whatever reason, my princess seams always come out a little too pointy even for me. So I'm going to just take off a little bit of excess from here, and I find that that loss doesn't hurt me, especially because I'll be using a fabric with some stretch. This should be okay. Also, I should apologize now for the state of my manicure in this video. I'm working also on building a Star Wars themed set right now, so my hands are covered in paint and scratches, and I have paint staining my nails and stuff like that, so my apologies for the state of my sad manicure. Like, kind of just shave off a tiny, like, again, probably a 1/16 of an inch off the apex, like where this triangle is, was where our apex, the very middle point of the bust, is supposed to be. So I'm just going to kind of take off a tiny sliver, a little half moon, a very tiny sliver moon shape off the very pointy end of the bust here, just so that lies a little bit smoother over the bust point here. Okay, and I just finally added in my little notches that I forgot to add on this version of this pattern. But you can see this is going to get sewn to this, and those lines have to match up when you're sewing later. But what I'm going to do is also use those lines as a way to lower my bust point. Now, some would say, Bianca, why don't you just fix this pattern and then your bust point will come out to the correct place when you do a princess seam? And you know what? Here's the thing. When I use that, most of the time it's fine. Ignore the future lightsaber parts that are sitting here, by the way. When I use that pattern, most of the time it's fine. Here's the mess also. But when I do princess seams, for whatever reason, the bust just comes out a little high. So I just prefer to lower it on the princess seam itself. So I'm going to show you how I do that. I did include this modification in my princess seam vest patterning video that I did recently as well, so I'll put a card up to that where I also show this modification, but I'm going to do it here again. And basically what you do is from those notches that I nearly forgot to add on here and had to do that cut in of it, I draw a little box on both of these, and I'm going to cut that box out, lower it a ½ inch for both, and then tape it back together and fill in the spaces. So I'll show you what that looks like after I have done so. So I've literally just drawn some boxes from those notches about 1.5 inches or 2 inches in, and I'm just going to cut this box out, lower it, cut this box out and lower it that ½ inch, which just makes the bust sit a little bit better when I'm doing a princess seam on me. Whether that's my body that has changed since I made this pattern, or that this pattern was never perfectly correct, in any case, this modification is what helps my princess seams fit for me, and it's just something I include. So if you're finding that when you're doing princess seams that the bust point is coming out a little bit high and you have a little bit of excess, I'll show you on my t-shirt. And yes, this is a Howl's Moving Castle t-shirt. So if above your bust point here, there's like extra like this, it probably means that the bust point is too high to fit your bust properly. Sorry, this is such a touchy-feely video all of a sudden. Demonetized. Anyway, so that's probably because this bust point, this is becoming excess because the bust apex really maybe needs to be down here. The easiest way to fix this for me is just to cut this out and move it down that 1/2 inch. I find that that is what works for me again. So this is what that looks like when I cut those boxes out and move them down that 1/2 inch. You can see where it's overlapped here. And then I have that 1/2 inch of space I need to fill in. So I will go ahead, take some scrap paper and fill in that 1/2 inch on each side. And I'll show you, this one it's fine because it's just a straight line, and it'll be fine. But this one I'll show you what to do about this kind of jaggedy situation. Center front kind of piece here, again, that's just a straight line, so it should be fine. But over here on the side one, you can see it has like this little jump skip situation going on. You are going to want to cut off this excess of triangle. You don't want to blend from this line because then you just have your bust point high still, or strange, or not what you want. So you want to, from this new line down here, use this as a guide and kind of blend that one up into your shoulder princess here. So I'm going to go ahead and cut off this excess, including this little triangle from the original part of our pattern. We're going to get rid of it now. So I'm just going to go ahead and slice that off there. All right, so here is my basic princess seamed bodice. There's nothing particularly Return of the Jedi jacket like about this yet. It just has that princess seam that's a little bit closer to the arm than a regular princess seam would be. But other than that, it's basically just a princess. And so now I'm going to go ahead and start, I'm going to add seam allowance this because again, the outside of my pattern has seam allowance, but along this seam, because I cut into my block, I need to add seam allowance because there's a whole new seam and there's no allowance in there. So I'm going to go ahead and tape on seam allowance on here, and then I will show you how I'm going to make this princess seamed bodice into more Return of the Jedi jacket situation. All right, so now I have my princess seam with seam allowance on it, of course, essential. I'm going to be needing that later. And now I can start drawing in some of the specific design details that make this a little bit different. So the first thing here is you see on this image and also on the Return of the Jedi jacket that there's no, for this center panel area here, there's no seam connecting it down here. There does seem to be some sort of a, like epaulette almost at the top of the shoulder, which I'm not going to be doing on this one just because I'm going to simplify a little bit here. Just because it's not even a jacket anymore, it's a dress instead. You know, we're taking some inspiration from the 50s, some inspiration from the jacket. So I'm eliminating the epaulette, but I'm just going to make sure that this is still smooth up here. But up in here, up in this little zone is where most of the detailing is going to happen. So first things first, if we imagine this without the extra panel I'm going to be adding, we just have to have this curved line across the top here and a yoke next to our neckline up here. So first thing we're going to do here is I'm just going to decide how far down from the center front I want that yoke to be, because this panel comes up pretty high up to the collar. So I'm going to have this only come down like about 1.5 inches. So I'm going to go about 1.5 inches down from the neckline and then connect that over. I'm going to start straight out from here and then I'm just going to curve down a little bit so that just comes to be a little bit of a soft curve across the front like that. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that line in and show you what that will look like. So I'm actually just going to come down 1.25 inches here from the center front area. And of course that will leave me only like 3/4 of an inch once the collar is sewn onto this neckline here. So it's really going to be quite close up to this mandarin collar where this panel will lie eventually, which I think is quite, you know, closer to the Return of the Jedi jacket, so we're going to do that. So I've just come down and drawn a line all the way across here, and then again, I'm just going to come down maybe like 1/2 inch and blend that in to create that subtle curve across the front here. So I've just drawn in that little curve here. So I'm going to go ahead and cut along this line we drew here. Adding a yoke to something is super easy, by the way. Like if you just want a style line there, you just draw whatever line you want, slice it, and add seam allowance. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'll show you. I'll cut along this line and add seam allowance to each edge. And that's basically all I'm going to do to create the line across here, basically. And then I'll show you how I'm going to do the rest of this. Okay, so I've just cut along that line I just drew and then added seam allowance to each side here. So now I have this yoke area. Now, here at this center front of the yoke, you could cut this, like this is supposed to be cut on the fold, the center front area here of this panel. So it's nice and smooth, cut on the fold. You could do that same with here. You could cut this on the fold as well, but I actually kind of want to have a seam there with top stitching. I just think it will look nice next to the little split for the mandarin collar. So I'm going to go ahead and add 1/2 inch of seam allowance here too, because I'm going to cut this in 2 pieces and sew it together. You really could cut this on a fold, no problem. I just want to cut it as 2 pieces and do top stitching. So that is what I'm going to do, is just add a little bit of seam allowance along this center front area here. As you can see right now, it matches up with the center front of the bodice, original bodice pattern, but I am going to add a little bit extra there because I will be using that as a seam instead. So you can see that just extra bit of seam allowance makes this no longer line up completely, and that is because eventually that will be a seam and then it will again line up. We'll get there when I'm sewing later. But this is basically the front pattern done for now until I get to the collar portion, which I will do last here. But I will go ahead and show you what I'm going to do to the yoke on the back, which is going to be very similar. Again, we're just going to draw our line where we want it, cut the pieces apart, and then add seam allowance. So here is a tracing of my basic bodice block back, and I was just cutting away the excess here, but I got to the neck and I thought, oh wait, I want to change something first. This neck is actually quite like low. I mean, it's not really like, it's not a dipping back neckline now, is it? But it's quite low on my neck for sure. I do kind of hunch my shoulders because I'm a slouchy person, unfortunately, but to come up higher on my neck would fit a lot better, and I wish I had fixed my block next time, you know. But I'm going to come up probably, I don't know, at least 1.25 inches from where the center back is on my actual cardboard block, and just make that a much closer neckline, just because I want my mandarin collar to sit nicely in the back as well, even though I'm going to have that center back zipper, so my mandarin collar is going to be a little bit less ideal than it would be if I had it go all the way around the back, but whatever. In any case, I'm going to basically raise the back neckline is what I'm trying to say. So make sure the back neckline is fitted quite high and close to, I mean, not if you want the mandarin collar to stand down weirdly, but again, you need to have a kind of higher neck in the back. A lot of times people suggest when you're doing a mandarin collar to draft from a shirt pattern as opposed to a bodice pattern, like a dress bodice like we are doing here. Just because a shirt pattern usually is drafted with this in mind, with adding collars in mind, so it does have higher necklines for that reason. This one is just a little bit low on my block because it is a dress pattern, not a shirt pattern. So I'm just going to be raising that up. So I will draw that line in here, and I'll show you what that looks like. So that's what that looks like. I just came up. Let me see what it is. Yeah, 1.25 inches. So I just came up 1.25 inches from where the original neckline is in my back bodice block, and just ease that into the same point at the shoulder, of course, because I want this to match up with the front still. But I just want my neckline to be higher in the back so that my mandarin collar sits nicely, basically. So then I just have to decide how far down the back I want my yoke to be. If you imagine this is the armhole, you know, how far down along the shoulder, along the back do you want that line to be? This is kind of just mid-armhole here, so I can just kind of slap this ruler on here and just, you know, decide wherever you want. You can have it be higher, you can have it be lower, whichever you wish. I'm just going to probably put it here, kind of in the center-ish area here. I'm just going to draw a line there, just like I did on the front. Just draw your style line you want, cut the pattern apart, and add seam allowance. Alright, so here is my back yoke and back piece here. Again, I'm just leaving the start where it is. It's going to be fine. Center back zipper, going to be here, no problem. So really, the only thing I've done to the back is make it into 2 pieces, add a yoke basically, and then raise that back neckline so that I can do a mandarin collar. So our last thing here is to make that mandarin collar. So the thing is, if you just imagine that's gone, it's just a crew neck, right? It's like a tall, close neck, which we already have on here and here. So really you just need to make a collar piece to sew onto here. So I'm going to take this piece of paper over here. I'm going to show you how, measuring this back and front neckline, using those measurements to draft a simple mandarin collar for this dress. So first things first, for drafting that mandarin collar here, I'm going to just square off a little axis to work on. And then I'm going to start using my ruler. My ruler bends quite well. So I'm going to go ahead and measure from, if we imagine this point on the axis here is the center back where the zipper will go. Oh, this is sticking to, how did I grab a piece of tape? Good job. But if we imagine this little point on the axis is the very center back where our zipper will be of the collar, then we need to start with the measurement of the back neckline. So I'm just going to take my ruler and bend it with 2 hands, because I'm filming with 1 hand right now, but I'm going to bend this and measure how long this neckline is. And I'm going to use that measurement, and I'm going to go out from there and mark a point on this line. So if I measure along this curve, it is 3.5 inches. So I'm going to go from my center back out 3.5 inches. And then from this point, this is now the shoulder, if you imagine, I'm going to measure the front collar. So I will go ahead and measure along this part of the neckline and then mark that from here out. Also, when measuring these necklines, remember your seam allowance is in here. So for example, here, I don't want to include this seam allowance because this will be going away before I sew the collar on. So I'm going to ignore this and measure from this point up to 1/2 inch in from here, because again, there's seam allowance inherent in this pattern already. So I have to basically do from here to here and then minus that 1/2 inch again. So just in between, again, if you imagine this seam allowance is drawn in like it is down here. So you're just measuring the actual neckline distance. So basically this space here indicates the back neckline like length, and this is the front neckline length. So we have that. And now I'm going to go ahead and draw 1.25 inches is how tall I made mine. Anywhere from 1 inch to 1.5 inches is like standard for a mandarin collar. I'm going to do 1.25 inches, just split that in the middle there. So I'm going to draw a line 1.25 inches up, and then I'll show you how we're just going to tilt this up just a little bit here to follow the line of the neck a bit. So I've just drawn a line 1.25 inches up from our original axis here, and then I've drawn a little line 1/2 inch up from this too down here, because we're going to tip the front half of this up a little bit, or 1/2 inch up. So I'm just going to go ahead and curve from this point down to the shoulder line. So just a little curve along the front here that just tips the collar into the correct curve for around the neckline. Again, this is, you know, I'm not making this up. I'm doing this based on the instructions in Patterns of Fashion, just a little bit simplified because I'm lazy, as we know. So I'm just going to go ahead and curve from this point to where this marks up here, right there. I'm just going to draw a curve in from that and then redraw the 1.25 inches up along that as well. I'm just going to be using my French curve ruler for this. These are pretty inexpensive and really good to pick up if you like are nervous about drawing curves and stuff like that. Usually you can find a spot on here, so I just, you know, connected that point to this one down here on the straight-ish end of this ruler and drew in like that perfect little curve there that I could never sketch a nice curve like that myself. And then I can come up that 1.25 inches or whatever and do the same up here, and my line will be the same and nice and smooth and what have you. So here is my little mandarin collar. I wonder if there's another word for these collars other than that, because it kind of seems strange. I don't know. I don't really like design features. Like, it's like kimono sleeve, where it doesn't really have anything to do with kimono. And, you know, like, Mandarin is a language as well as a culture, and I'm confused. I mean, like, I know a lot of traditional Chinese garments use collars like this, and that's why it's called that, but it does seem a little bit strange, but that is a topic for another day, I suppose. So you can leave this pointy here, or you can just curve this off a little bit, or you can do whatever shape you want. You can make it, whoa, you can point out further. Like, you can do whatever you want to do, but I'm just going to round this a tiny bit here. And then I need to add seam allowance to all edges of this, basically, because this is going to get sewn onto the dress at the neckline. This is going to need to be all encompassed inside. So basically just draw seam allowance, curve this however you'd like, as much or as little as you would like, for here at the, like, under your chin on the collar, and then just add seam allowance all around this pattern. So here's what that mandarin collar looks like once you've added seam allowance all around. Again, it's just a subtle curve up here at the front, or at least that's what I decided to do. I have marked the center front and center back on here, and then I have marked the like 45-degree angle arrow line guideline for when I cut these out. It's best to cut these mandarin collars on the bias. That's just what I've always been told, and it is what has worked for me in the past. So I will be doing it again here. That bias in the collar just adds a little bit more ease and movement into the collar, which of course is nice to have comfort up there, right close to your neck, because this is quite a close collar style and shape. So that's the last piece for the bodice of the Return of the Jedi inspired 1950s dress bodice here. Here's the front again. We have the center front portion of the princess two-piece bodice front and the side front, and we have the yoke for that, and then the back piece and the back yoke. Again, you're just going to be cutting out, you know, lefts and rights of this, left and right of this, up here, left and right of that, but I am going to be cutting out 3 of these. Again, this one is on the fold. I need to cut one that will be sewn to this, and that'll be the kind of under layer that looks like this, and then I have this flappy extra top stitch situation that I'll be going on here. You'll see that in the sewing portion. So I do need 2 more of this piece in addition to the set. So one will be sewn to this, and then I'll need 2 more. So I do need to cut 3 of this in the end. One of them will need to be white because, of course, I have that collar that folds down, and it's supposed to be white on the inside to show that Luke is a true light side Jedi and will not turn to the dark side. The symbolism in this costume is awesome. Very well done. So I'm going to cut out 3 of these, 2 in the black sateen and 1 in white sateen. And while I'm sewing, you will see exactly just why that is. So this is the front bodice, or the front and back, the bodice for this dress that I'll be making. Now, if you have ever seen a fitting shell or a sloper basic block set pattern situation, you'll notice that a lot of other things are similar about this. So the basic pencil skirt or straight skirt that comes with a fitting shell, that's what I'm using for this. So I'll just be using my basic pencil skirt pattern from my fitting shell, my basic block set of stuff. I'll just be using the pencil skirt from that. The sleeve is just a standard long sleeve, again, from my fitting shell, my basic block pattern. So as long as you have a basic block set, a fitting shell pattern, a sloper pattern that you already have fitted to you, you already have the rest of this done. The only modifications that need to be done are to the bodice pattern, and the skirt is just the standard pencil skirt. The sleeve is just the standard long sleeve. Those are part of the sloper. So again, as usual, I recommend, and for this tutorial in general, it is essential that you have a fitting shell, a sloper with a standard skirt and sleeve, the whole shebang. Again, I will link to a video where I talk about how to obtain said fitting shell from a commercial pattern, or to make one from a commercial pattern, or they do have commercial patterns for a block shell available, and I will link those in the description below as well. You're gonna need a block fitting shell sloper. I use all those terms interchangeably, I'm sorry. You're gonna need one of those to be able to do any of the pattern drafting I do here on my channel. Basically, I haven't shown how to do the blocks from scratch yet. We will get to it eventually. It's gonna be so much math, you guys. I promise I'll do it, but oof, it's hard. It's hard to commit to when it's just gonna be tedious, and I'm sure not many of you are actually going to sit through it. I promise. You're going to get real bored and click out of there. But here's our Return of the Jedi inspired bodice pattern. The rest of the pieces come from that sloper. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to iron my black sateen fabric that I'll be using to make this dress and start cutting everything out. I am not going to be lining this dress at all. Black sateen, especially the like slightly stretch black sateen that I usually get from Joann's. It's really nice fabric. I love working with it. They have a great bottom weight sateen is what they call it over at the Joann's, and that's what I'll be using for this. I don't think it requires a lining. It's fully opaque. It's quite on the medium weight side, so it's perfect. For something like this, I made a mini dress without a lining out of it. I'm not going to be doing any facings or anything up here, basically because the collar is self-faced, aka you're going to cut out 4 of this piece, 2 lefts, 2 rights, because it's like faced with itself. You could line the collar in white too if you wanted to, which would be kind of cool to have the collar on the inside white too. Again, you don't have to do this in black white. You can do any colors you want also. So you're going to be cutting out 4 of this piece in the end, and the seam allowances along the collar get encompassed inside of it. I'll show you the hand sewn finishing that gets done in the end to make that possible. But basically this is all finished inside, and then everything else inside I'm not going to worry about. I'm just going to serge the edges of those pieces, and that will be how I finish those. But I'm not worried about aligning on this dress. If I was making it out of a scratchy wool or something like that, or even like an itchier linen, maybe, I would worry about aligning. But because I'm using cotton sateen and it's a quite comfortable fabric, I'm not going to worry about it.
So here I am just starting to lay out this finished pattern on my black sateen fabric. Of course, I will be doing the cutting and sewing portion of this project in a separate video here, but I have linked this up as a playlist. Hopefully that means it will just automatically play the next video. If it doesn't, it will be annotated here as well, also linked in the description as well. I may do a card as well, just all the ways to get to the second part of this video for you. Hopefully that will just play automatically. Maybe if you have autoplay on, it will. I'm not exactly sure if this will work, but let's just... But thank you for watching this first part, and I hope you'll join me in the second one.